Hi, guys. Imagine feeling sick and not yourself and visiting your doctor over and over and over again, and they can't figure out what's wrong with you. And then imagine that doctor, because you continue to come and complain of the same thing, starting to insinuate that you might be a hypochondriac or that it's all in your head. Well, that's what happened to me in the year 2000. After not visiting the doctor for all of the years that I had a health plan, except for one time, the doctor should have known that I didn't have a record of being a hypochondriac. But here it is. This woman is visiting my office over 6 times. So it has to indicate to me that something must be wrong. Even if I can't figure it out through diagnostic tests, something is off with this woman's body. So because the doctor didn't want to help me and he didn't want to look at all of those factors that were involved in Vera coming to his office, I had to empower myself and I had to figure out what was wrong with me and why I was not feeling the same. So I started reading all of the health books that I could. For the first time, I started visiting health food stores, which I had never done because I was never cognizant of anything nutritionally healthy. It wasn't you know, in my atmosphere, nothing. I didn't have anyone, even within my family, that was wise when it came to nutrition. We just did what everyone else did. But for some reason, it just felt strong in my spirit that I should start to investigate this. And so I did, and I learned so much, and eventually I diagnosed myself. And it was such a simple issue that I was dealing with, but it made my body feel terrible. I felt like I could not concentrate. I could not think. My hands were cold, and my over my body at the same time every day. I would get from my head down to my feet this overwhelming sense of fatigue. It was so strong where it was almost as if I would pass out. That's how strong the fatigue was. And so I had to take this to my doctor and present it to him and show him that this was the reason I kept coming to you. And because the symptoms were not because it was not symptomatic of what I finally diagnosed myself with, the doctor just thought, I was out of my mind to even suggest such a thing. It was a sinus infection. That's what I diagnosed myself with. And it seems so simple because, we look at sinus infections like it's just a simple type of cold. But in reality, you can die from a sinus infection. And if you have it for a long time, you can feel absolutely horrific. So I took it to the doctor and I told him, I said, this is it. I said, check my sinuses. And so he was a very arrogant man. Kind of funny, though. His arrogance was pretty funny to me. But he was arrogant, and he said, I'm the doctor. You're the patient. How dare you undermine my credentials by telling me that you know better than me, and not only that, but that all along this was a simple sinus infection. And so as humbly as I could, I was like, well, doctor, I'm the patient and I'm the customer. And what I will pay you for is only a diagnosis and a remedy. And you will perform your job for me today. You will check my sinuses. And so reluctantly, huffing and puffing, this is how the doctor was, he huffed and puffed out of the room. And he had the woman that worked with him give me a x-ray of my sinuses. At the time, I didn't know the damages of x-rays. So he took an x-ray of my sinuses, and 15 minutes later, he comes in the office, huffing and puffing, without an apology, and says, you have the worst sinuses I've ever seen in my life. That's how he said it. And he says, I have never seen such a horrible sinus infection as this. And so he had to give me prescriptions for it, steroids and antibiotics. And the thing that I realized was at the time, it was the year 2000, and I lived in Brooklyn. And Giuliani had started a spraying of mosquito campaign where they would spray chemicals in the air. And in addition to that, I got a flu shot that year, which I never had. Don't ask me why I did it. But I think it was the culmination of those two factors that contributed to such a horrible sinus infection. So needless to say, eventually I took the antibiotics and the steroids, and they didn't work. So I had to go back to the office about 5 times for another round of antibiotics and steroids, and still nothing worked. So just as I diagnosed myself, I now had to figure out a natural remedy to my problem, and this is it. Cayenne pepper and fenugreek. Fenugreek is amazing. It cleans your lymphatic system, removes mucus from the body, and loosens it, which is why it's so effective on the sinuses. And the cayenne pepper together, they work together to get rid of the worst sinus infections that you can ever have. Guys, which within 3 days, I was cured of that horrible, worst sinus infection that my doctor had ever seen. So, if you have a sinus infection, know anyone that does, these are the 2 babies that you need. And this is also, the fenugreek is also good for breast health, sisters. It can help prevent breast cancer, and the reason for that is that it cleans the lymphatics within the mammary glands. So, and it also is said to make your breasts bigger. So this is worth the research. It's worth taking. Do some research. Put it together, guys, and clear yourself of those horrible sinus infections. And even if you don't have a sinus infection, you can even take it just to ensure and keep your sinuses and your lymphatic system clean all year round. So try it. Give it a try, and do your research on it first. Okay, guys? Take care, and shalom and barakatham.